He didn't say a damn word when they handed him the pink slip in front of 30 people. Just stood there, like a marble statue with a heartbeat, slid his badge across the polished table, and walked out like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. I'll never forget the sound. His shoes against that cheap vinyl floor, the faintest click of the glass door shutting behind him, and then silence. You could have heard a mouse fart in that conference room. Jace, the new Golden Boy COO with his VC polished teeth and zip-up vest, blinked like he'd just deleted a core file by accident. Well, he chuckled, we need to stay lean, honey. Honey. He called Alec honey. And Alec didn't even flinch, just walked out with the same deadpan face he used when the cafeteria toaster caught fire last year and he unplugged it mid-burn. I was in the back of the room, frozen halfway between a coffee sip and a panic attack. Because here's what they don't get. People like Alec don't raise their voice. They log things, every meeting, every decision, every damn compliance deviation you tried to brush under the rug because we're pre-IPO now and the feds don't actually audit fintechs this small. People like Alec remember. He was the one who set up our onboarding controls, wrote the data retention protocols, and designed the entire user permission structure from scratch, back when we had folding chairs and a whiteboard held up by duct tape. He was the system. But the minute the Series D money hit and our company Christmas party got moved from a bowling alley to a rooftop bar with bottle service, everything changed. Suddenly, the old-timers weren't visionary anymore. They were legacy load. You know the type. New leadership, all flash and jargon, calling themselves builders, because they read a book about Amazon's culture once. And Alec? He stopped getting invited to product syncs, got left off calendar invites. Even the new PM started talking over him on Slack, like he was an intern they forgot to offboard. He never said anything, just nodded, typed, and logged. But I saw him stay late 3 nights in a row, headphones in, scanning terminal logs like he was piecing together a crime scene. And here's where I pause, because 97% of you listening to this probably haven't subscribed or liked this story yet. If you're into real stories where calm people burn empires by doing absolutely nothing extra, just letting the truth catch up, go ahead and hit that like. Subscribe too. It tells the team to keep going, and frankly, it helps us find more stories like Alex. Back to that room. Jace did a little chuckle snort and tried to move the meeting along, some pitch about synergies across compliance and operations. But his voice cracked. HR looked like they'd swallowed a stapler. No one said a word. Not even Derek from marketing, who once live-tweeted our stand-up for clout. It was like Alec took the air with him. Or maybe just the last thread of actual adult supervision. Later that day, I passed by his desk. Empty. Monitor powered off. One post-it left on his keyboard, folded once. I didn't read it then, but I should have. The day Jace rolled in wearing Allbirds and ego, we all knew something was about to get bulldozed. He introduced himself with a 5-minute TED Talk about lean operational throughput and redefining success metrics, which is code for, I'm about to fire the people who actually keep this ship afloat. Alec didn't say much. He just tapped his pen once, scribbled something in his notebook, and sipped his black coffee like he was watching a toddler play with scissors. Within a week, Alec's calendar started thinning out. First it was the compliance syncs, then the vendor calls. The new product managers, bright-eyed kids straight out of Berkeley, started slinging phrases like compliance agility and acceptable audit elasticity. They thought governance was a speed bump, not the guardrail keeping us out of federal court. I watched Alex sit through one of their presentations without blinking, just tilting his head the way a mechanic does when he hears a weird noise in an engine. Then, quietly, he flagged 4 major violations in the Slack thread. Data exposure, vendor misclassification, commingled accounts, and one wild bit where someone tried to retroactively timestamp a quarterly report. You'd think that kind of info would send a company into lockdown. Instead, eye rolls. Actual goddamn eye rolls. Jace replied with, "Let's not get caught up in legacy thinking, Alec. Speed is security." I stared at my screen, wondering if I was the only one who heard that sentence implode in on itself. Meanwhile, HR got real interested in Alec's role. Said they were doing a scope alignment review, which is Silicon Valley speak for, "We're trying to figure out how to justify pushing you out without a lawsuit." I saw the look on Alec's face when the email came through. Blank, not surprised, not even irritated, just done. That's when he stopped talking in meetings, not out of spite. Alec doesn't do drama. He just went quiet. Cold, efficient, mechanical. Logged everything. Backed up everything. I passed his desk one night and saw him running a command line export with a file name that made my blood run cold. Admin, access, ledger, final. Final. He knew. And here's what'll haunt me. Nobody asked him what he was doing. Not once. Not even Jace, who strutted around like he invented fintech, noticed the guy who literally designed our audit resilience protocols was slowly building a silent arc. Alex spent that whole week doing something I couldn't quite figure out. Some of it was normal, log rotations, system notes. But then he started tweaking permissions, nothing major, just subtle reassignments. Quiet enough that it looked routine, but it wasn't. And we all missed it. I should have asked him that day. I should have stopped by and said, "Hey, what's really going on?" But instead, I watched him close his laptop like he was sealing a coffin, slide in his USB, and walk out for lunch with a kind of peace that didn't belong in this building anymore. He never came back from that lunch. They called it an all-hands alignment session. That's how you know something's rotten before it starts. I've sat through enough of those to recognize the smell of sanitized bloodletting. Jace strutted in like a discount Jobs, sleeves rolled, grinning like he'd just solved climate change with a PowerPoint. Behind him, HR looked nervous, real nervous, like they knew the bomb was in their hands and were praying it didn't go off too early. Alec was already seated at the edge of the table, same spot he always took. Arms crossed, not angry, not twitchy, just still. I swear, it's like he'd already lived this meeting 3 times in his head and was just waiting for the moment to match the memory. Jace clicked through a few slides. Metrics, market shifts, blah blah Series D expectations. You know the drill. "We're entering a new era," he said, like he was launching a space program, not gutting a team that built the foundation with duct tape and 19-hour days. Then came the line. I still remember the way he leaned against the screen, trying to look casual. There's been a lot of structural reassessment. As we move toward automation-led compliance, we've identified some legacy roles that no longer align with our strategic vision. He turned to Alec, didn't even blink. Which means, "Alec, buddy, your role is redundant. No hard feelings." Then the kicker. "We need to stay lean, honey." He winked. He actually winked at Alec like he was dismissing a waitress who brought him the wrong drink. For a half second, no one breathed. I looked around, expecting Alec to explode, or laugh, or spit. Something, anything. But Alec? He stood, took one breath, calm, measured, reached into his pocket, pulled out his badge, and slid it across the table without a word. That little plastic rectangle might as well have been a guillotine blade. Jace blinked. Clearly didn't expect it to be that easy. Tried to recover. "Hey man, no need to be dramatic. We can..." But Alec was already walking. Past the product team, past HR, past me, no hesitation, no spin, just gone. And then, God help us, someone clapped. I think it was Evan from BizDev. Just one awkward, lonely clap before he realized what the hell he'd done and shrank into his chair like a toddler who farted during prayer. Jace's smile faltered. Alec didn't look back, not even once. The funny thing is, everyone thought Alec just faded away, like one of those guys who takes a severance check and disappears into some cabin to read hardcover thrillers and forget the world ever tried to chew him up. But Alec doesn't fade. He observes, he listens, and when it's time to move, he does it with the precision of a surgeon who knows where every vein leads and how to make them bleed if he needs to. That night, in a second-floor apartment overlooking an alley that smelled like old fryer grease and mildew, Alec booted up his personal laptop. Nothing fancy. No RGB lights, no hacker movie dramatics, just a quiet hum, a login screen, and a terminal window opening with a sigh like an old friend greeting him back. He didn't drink, didn't put on music. Just sat there in the dim glow of his desk lamp, typing commands that had probably been sitting in draft for months. He opened the back end of the compliance system, something he had root access to, even after they'd pushed him out. Not because they were sloppy, but because they had no idea where the real keys were hidden. He scrolled to a specific line buried in the documentation services failover protocols. Trigger, audit, burst, on admin, revocation. Not new, not a bomb, just a feature. One he built himself when the company landed its first federal procurement contract. The logic was simple. If Alec's admin privileges were removed, it would initiate a cascade, preparing logs, bundling compliance threads, syncing backups, and notifying external regulators that something had changed inside the access environment. Normally, it was set to dormant, default state, never needed to be used, until now. Alec toggled the variable, changed one flag, active as true, then set the countdown. 12 hours from final revocation. He saved the configuration and watched the system accept it. No errors, no warnings, just silence. Then he pulled up the admin access ledger, the final version he'd exported days ago, scrolled to the co-admin fallback field, still there. Kendra R., non-technical observer, last login 22 months ago, access level full, audit role passive. Alec blinked once, didn't smile, didn't flinch. The CEO's wife had asked for access at a fundraiser dinner because she wanted to understand the business better. She'd never opened the platform again, but Jace had signed off saying, "It'll be cute for PR." Now she was the sole co-administrator of a system about to light itself up like Times Square. Alec typed a short log entry, time-stamped it, encrypted it, then he closed the laptop. No gloating, no Twitter thread, no leaks. He just let the process run. At exactly 9:15 a.m., the quiet hum of a Tuesday morning turned into a goddamn earthquake. I was sipping stale break room coffee, scrolling through a product sprint doc no one was going to follow, when I caught the black SUV pulling up through the tinted lobby windows. Government plates. 4 doors. Unsmiling men in pressed shirts and government-grade shoes stepped out like they'd been waiting 6 months to ruin someone's quarter. They walked in without hesitation. One of them held up a badge that made the receptionist go stiff. She barely managed to buzz them through the glass doors before her headset slipped off her ear and clattered to the floor. I heard her whisper, "Procurement. Federal procurement." That word hit the Slack channels before her voice hit the air. The company hive lit up. Emoji reactions, private threads, panicked DMs. WTF is happening? Is this about that resync error? Why is legal on 4th floor? I was already making my way to the war room. By the time I reached the door, Jace was inside, pacing like he couldn't figure out which wall was real. His voice was a touch too high, trying to act casual. Of course, we're happy to cooperate." The lead auditor didn't even look at him, just dropped a thick binder on the glass table. Flip, flip, flip. "We're here regarding compliance logs tied to contract number 9742A under section 114.3, the man said. No fluff, just bullets. "We were notified that administrator access changed within a high-risk infrastructure system. Where's Alec Mallory?" Silence. I swear to God, if crickets had started chirping in that overpriced, acoustically engineered conference room, I wouldn't have blinked. Jace cleared his throat. Alec no longer works here. We've, transitioned to a more agile configuration." The auditor looked up, one brow raised. Legal appeared out of nowhere, sweat already forming under his blazer. He muttered something about transition logs and elevated tokens. The auditor flipped to the admin ledger, pointed. "You listed her as your sole fallback?" He chuckled, flipping the page toward legal, then Jace. Kendra R., non-technical observer. The name was underlined. The room froze. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. Because that wasn't just some passive entry, that was the CEO's wife. The same woman who once asked if the firewall was the same thing as a ring light during a holiday Zoom party. The same woman who forgot her Slack password and made IT reset it by mailing a screenshot of her dog. She hadn't logged into the system in almost 2 years. Now, she was the only person on record with root access after Alec walked. The lead auditor didn't smirk. He just exhaled sharply, like he was trying not to laugh too loud, then calmly reached into his case and pulled out a USB. "We'll need a complete audit trail of all infrastructure changes since the Series D transfer. Please provide it within the hour." Jace's face turned a shade I'd only seen once, when someone realized the backup they deleted was actually live production. And somewhere, maybe even at that very moment, Alec was sitting in his apartment, probably eating dry cereal straight from the box, watching a recording of that meeting leak online. The camera had caught the auditor's line perfectly. "You listed her?" Followed by 4 seconds of silence that echoed like a death knell. The place went feral by noon. Jace's entire agile leadership facade shattered like cheap laminate as engineers started crawling through terminal windows like rats trying to find a door in a sinking ship. Nobody had root. Nobody had inherited permissions. The federated dashboard, grayed out, data vaults, locked. Every failover access point Alec had ever architected now blinking red with some smug little credential chain broken message we'd never seen before and couldn't override. Then came the real punch to the gut. Kendra, yes, that Kendra, CEO's wife, Instagram lifestyle queen turned non-technical observer, was sitting in legal's glass box in tears because she couldn't remember her login, or her recovery email, or her 2FA device. "I think I deleted that app when I ran out of storage," she sniffled, like this was a Sephora return and not a federal compliance lockout. Her last login was 22 months ago. 2 years. And this woman had been designated the sole co-administrator of our audit-proof platform. The auditors weren't even mad at this point. They were amused. One of them asked, totally deadpan, "Does she even know what SHA 256 is?" Jace barked out a nervous laugh like he understood the joke. He didn't. They requested a full dump of the compliance logs. Jace nodded, sweaty as a pork roast, and told them the logs were externalized into our multi-cloud layer. Except they weren't. I know because I used to work with Alec. I watched him set up our internal record vaults to meet federal archiving standards. They were local, encrypted, tiered, and tied every last key to Alec's credentials and time-based revocation flags. A dev intern tried to break in via an older super user shell and tripped a watchdog protocol that rebooted the session and sent a warning ping to a domain we didn't recognize. 2 minutes later, a blinking banner lit up the screen. "Access requires primary admin. Status revoked." That's when the junior engineer, Tommy, I think, found it. Deep in the codebase, tucked into the raw logs under a post-deployment comment string, time-stamped the day before Alec walked. Revoke me, revoke the audit key. That one line sucked the oxygen out of the room. Legal turned slowly to Jace like they were about to slap him with a chair. The lead auditor didn't move, just scribbled something in a little black notebook and asked for a time-stamped list of all system changes made post-access revocation. Jace tried to stall. "We'll need some time to reconstruct the auditor cut him off. "Time is not the issue. Chain of custody is." That's when Jace cracked. His collar was soaked, voice pitching up. He started rambling about legacy dependencies and trust structures that Alec had overcomplicated. Like that would somehow explain why a company promising full audit readiness now couldn't even prove who had access to its own platform. Meanwhile, Slack was on fire. People screenshotting terminal errors, posting clips of Alec's badge slide from the security cam. Someone even found a podcast episode from last year where Alec mentioned designing systems that break safely when broken. That's when I realized it. This wasn't sabotage. This was a feature, one no one else had read, because no one else bothered to learn how the damn system worked. And now, the man who wrote the manual had left the building with the only working copy in his head. By Wednesday morning, the Slack channels turned into a digital war zone, half the threads locked, the other half boiling over with nervous emojis and dead-end questions, the kind of chaos that smells like blood in the water, only everyone's pretending it's just a network event. Meanwhile, legal had gone full damage control mode, scheduling emergency huddles, dragging product managers into compliance briefings they didn't understand, and muttering about containment language for upcoming investor calls. Then someone quietly reached out to Alec. Not Jace, not HR, legal. An email from an associate general counsel, couched in that nauseating corporate politeness. "Hi, Alec. Hope this finds you well. Would love to have a quick chat when you're available. Just a couple clarifying questions. Recent access shifts. No direct ask, no apology, just desperation dressed up like curiosity." Alec didn't answer right away. He waited. almost like he wanted them to sit with the discomfort. And then, around 11:02 a.m., the response came in. Short, surgical. All relevant logs were auto-synced to the Federal Archive as per SLA Addendum B, no sign-off, no greeting, no hint of friendliness. Just that one sentence. Clean, cold, irrefutable. When I saw it, I got chills. Because I remembered Addendum B. It was a dusty appendix no one had reviewed since the federal contract was signed. Alec had drafted it himself. Buried in it was a clause stating that upon admin access termination without compliance transfer protocol, all logs would be auto-forwarded to the Federal Procurement Oversight Archive within a 12-hour grace period. He didn't threaten. He didn't hint. He just confirmed what had already happened. The logs were gone, out of reach, immutable, stored in a place not even legal could redact without triggering federal disclosure violations. And that's when the panic really started. I watched the private threads pop one by one. Does anyone know how much Alex sent? Are there credentials in the transfer logs? Why the hell was Kendra even in the admin list? The board was officially looped in by that afternoon, and like a domino line soaked in gasoline, everything started to collapse. Kendra deleted her Instagram, TikTok, even the blog she ran where she wrote about founder, wife life, and holistic turmeric smoothies. Gone. Scrubbed. Like she thought erasing her online presence would somehow undo the admin designation. Jace, cornered and panting, started pointing fingers like a drowning man swatting flies. Blamed DevOps for not overriding the system, engineering for relying too heavily on legacy architecture, and legal for not catching the loopholes Alec embedded. But the truth was plain and brutal. There were no loopholes. There was a contract. There were protocols, and Alec had followed them with terrifying accuracy. No backdoors, no vengeance, just a system doing exactly what it was built to do. And now, the man they dismissed like a barista with bad vibes? He was the only person in the country who understood what came next. Alec didn't gloat, didn't tweet, didn't leak screenshots to the press. He just let the panic breathe, let it multiply, and kept his hands completely clean. The second SUV didn't even try to be discreet. No tinted windows, no subtle entrance. They parked right outside the main doors like a goddamn funeral procession, except this one carried clipboards, not caskets. I saw the logo on their jackets before they even stepped out. SEC, not procurement, not compliance. This was a whole new level of pain. By noon, the panic had gone from silent Slack threads to audible phone calls behind closed doors. Finance locked down their war room. Legal stopped smiling altogether. The head of investor relations walked straight into a glass panel because she was too busy reading something on her iPad. The official line was routine follow-up, but everyone knew that was horse shit. This wasn't routine. This was scorched earth. They were citing procurement discrepancies, specifically tied to how funds were allocated post-Series D in relation to federal infrastructure usage, which meant someone had flagged our books, and that someone knew exactly where to look. At 3:14 p.m., an all-staff email hit inboxes like a shotgun blast. Jace Manning is on temporary administrative leave pending internal review. No explanation. No signatures, just black font on a white background, cold as a morgue drawer. Some people gasped. Others just nodded. Because the minute Alec's name hit those federal archive logs, Jace's countdown had already started. The CEO, he wasn't much better. Word spread that he'd recorded a damage control video for stakeholders, visibly shaken and reading from a teleprompter like he was being held hostage. Phrases like internal misalignment, unexpected triggers, and we remain committed to transparency were peppered between shaky apologies and promises to rebuild trust with our partners. He kept glancing off screen like someone was holding up cue cards with the word breathe in all caps. And then, just when the dust threatened to settle, a grainy photo leaked to a private Discord thread. Alec, stepping through the front doors of a federal building in D.C., that afternoon, wearing the same black coat he used to hang on the back of his chair. No smile, no entourage, just a messenger bag and a badge clipped to his chest. It wasn't corporate. It was federal. The thread went nuclear. Someone posted, "Is he consulting?" Another replied, "Bro, he built the audit." Then came the leak. A memo, forwarded and screen capped by someone too low in the food chain to be careful. A single sentence highlighted in yellow. The platform claimed to be audit proof. We found it logic proof. No anger, no drama, just a quiet death sentence wrapped in a dry joke. By that point, even the board couldn't deny it. Alec hadn't just left. He'd handed them exactly what they asked for. An audit-proof system, one they could no longer access. And no amount of money, spin, or last-minute consultants could change that. 2 weeks later, the press release dropped with all the elegance of a cat falling down a staircase. Following recent evaluations, company name redacted, is proud to announce a robust compliance restructuring initiative focused on restoring operational transparency and enhancing stakeholder trust across all regulatory domains. Not a single admission, no mention of the audit, no apology for the chaos, just the usual sterile word soup cooked up by PR interns under boardroom fire. Internally, everyone knew what it meant. The system broke because they broke the system. And now they were trying to glue it back together with buzzwords and non-disclosure agreements. What most people missed, buried halfway through the release under strategic collaborations, was one quiet sentence. We are pleased to confirm the onboarding of a senior advisory liaison to the federal regulatory body overseeing infrastructure compliance moving forward. No name, no title. But those of us who knew, because that same day in a modest conference room in DC, I watched a live stream of a panel discussion hosted by the National Compliance Standards Council. Nothing flashy, no fanfare, just 4 chairs, some lukewarm coffee, and a banner that read, "Invisible Infrastructure, Why You Don't Fire the Guy Who Built the Locks." Alec was front and center, clean-cut, composed, in a dark gray suit he probably hadn't worn since our Series A launch party. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. He spoke with the kind of clarity that doesn't come from ego, but from knowing how it all works, knowing what happens when you ignore the foundation because the windows look nice. A board member from our own company sat in the last row, face like stone, watching Alec speak like he was seeing a ghost that remembered everything. Alec talked about resilience, about systems designed to protect truth, not performance metrics. He never once mentioned the company. Never needed to. He ended with a line that hung in the air like church bells. Your infrastructure is only invisible until you lose it. Then suddenly, everyone wants to know who built the locks. I don't know if the board member clapped. I don't think it mattered. Because in the end, Alec didn't burn the building down. He just turned off the lights, locked the doors, and walked away with the only key. They built an audit-proof system. Then fired the one person who knew where the keys were.